Alrighty, this We the People News one more time at it. Educational purposes only, okay? Not an attorney, not giving legal advice, okay? And never look straight forward, always look around you, be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Use the Second Amendment, arm yourself with knowledge. Alright? And this is one of the ways. 10th Amendment, okay? So go check him out. Now, prior to, I had some videos, a couple of videos back. We talked about the Ninth Amendment and how if you use the 10th Amendment, you got to use the Ninth Amendment to give it extra strength, okay? Because they're supposed to work together, all right? And I watched a video earlier today by Power Inherited in the People, and watched a court case recently put out, right? The judge says, the states have, you know, uh, the 10th Amendment, powers reserved to the state. But the judge never actually said, or the people. He just stayed on the state. Now, the original intent, back in the day, state still means the people. So that may be a little confusing, but at the particular time, state is the people, but it's the body of the people. Or the people, which is the individual people, right? So in this country, our courts is supposed to be operating in individual parts, right? They're not supposed to have case law somewhere else that comes close to mine and call, well, see, we had this here, that's fine and dandy. Well, no, because my case still has a little bit of difference to it, or a whole lot. So it's still an individual court case, and it must be separate from the other court case because I have nothing to do with it. Neither did the cop. Neither did any of the attorneys. Neither did the judge. It's possible, but most likely not, right? So you guys got to take these things in stride of what they've been teaching us. So let's get a little original intent. Okay, the original intent of the 10th Amendment, and use this with 9.
The foundation of the Constitution. That's how Thomas Jefferson described the 10th Amendment. Not an add-on, not an afterthought, the entire point. Yet, ask the average American what it says or means, and you'll get mostly blank stares. Ask the government, and they usually pretend it doesn't even exist. But the founders and old revolutionaries, they didn't secede from an empire over taxes or tea. They fought a long, bloody war to free themselves from unlimited, centralized power in all cases whatsoever. The 10th Amendment was their answer. Power is never supposed to be assumed.
That's including taxes, people.
It must be delegated, and it comes from we the people of the several states. So on this episode, I'll share this forgotten foundation from revolution to ratification and what it all tells us about how to turn things around today. But first of all, before getting to that, welcome and thank you for joining me here on the Path to Liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. Now, in order to understand the foundation of the Constitution, you first have to understand what the founders and the old revolutionaries, what they seceded from, what James Madison later called the fundamental principle on which our independence itself was declared. Madison was talking about a fatal mistake made by the British Parliament in 1766 when they passed the Declaratory Act. These were a series of just short words that really sparked a revolution and brought down the empire. Again, the Declaratory Act was in response to the people's nullification of the Stamp Act. Sure, they repealed the Stamp Act, but they wanted to really claim that they still had power in all cases whatsoever. Now, before the British decided to claim that unlimited power, this is how the unwritten Constitution worked in the British system. Here from my new article over at the New American Magazine. For over a century, the system worked. Colonial legislatures governed local affairs. Parliament managed external issues such as foreign trade and war. Each stayed in its own lane, and none claimed the other's turf. Now, if that constitutional structure sounds familiar, well, it really should, because Madison understood that Parliament and the colonial legislatures were just equals. They weren't superior or subordinates as long as they were acting within their own spheres. They just had different jurisdictions. Here's how he described it. The fundamental principle of the Revolution was that the colonies were coordinate members with each other and with Great Britain. The legislative power, he wrote, was maintained to be as complete in each American parliament as in the British Parliament. So again, as long as they were acting within their own sphere, then their power was complete. It couldn't be basically invaded by the other. But as we all know, that system didn't last forever, because when Parliament destroyed this unwritten constitutional balance, when it invaded the colonial sphere with internal taxes and regulations, well, they ran into other problems. And this is how I put it in my article. The colonists understood the real fight wasn't over stamps, standing armies, taxation, or tea. All of those were, as John Hancock explained, mere symptoms of the deadly disease, examples of how the British, quote, exercised this pretended right. That's how John Hancock put it, describing the unlimited power of the Declaratory Act of 1766. Now, in the depths of winter, in December of 1776, Thomas Paine urged the people to fight on, even against all odds, because reconciliation against that type of a system was impossible. And here's how he put it in The American Crisis, #1. You're probably familiar with the phrase, "These are the times that try men's souls." That's how he kicked it off. But he also discussed the Declaratory Act. He said, Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. And Paine continued, and if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then there is not such a thing as slavery upon earth. Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to God. And this created a serious clash, and as James Madison explained,
And you hear in my other videos that, we have become slaves. Well, this is what they're talking about, y'all.
by claiming everything, the British quickly learned, well, over a number of very difficult years, that they ended up with nothing. He said the assertion by Great Britain of a power to make laws for the other members of the empire in all cases whatsoever ended in the discovery that she had a right to make laws for them in no cases whatsoever. And Madison described this clash, this fundamental clash about the limits of power, the basis of our Republican constitutions. This was the foundation, this structure of unlimited power against the British, instead of the unwritten system where they handled kind of the foreign things, war and external trade and regulations, and everything else was decided by the colonial legislatures. The American Revolution, it wasn't about tea or taxes. Those were mere symptoms of the underlying disease. It was about power. And when the founders came up with a solution for this, their solution was something that had never been done before. St. George Tucker described it like this, in view of the Constitution of the United States.
So then think about it. They have qualified immunity. You don't. They have absolute immunity. You don't, right? And according to their definition of a sovereign citizen, just that stuff right there by itself makes them a sovereign citizen by their definition.
He said, the American Revolution seems to have given birth to this new political phenomenon. In every state, a written constitution was framed and adopted by the people, both in their individual and sovereign capacity and character. And these written constitutions, they established the hierarchy in the American system. People on top, government on bottom. This is how Tucker described it. By this means, the just distinction between the sovereignty and the government was rendered familiar to every intelligent mind. The former was found to reside in the people and to be unalienable from them. The latter in their servants and agents. So government, under the American constitutions, is nothing more than a servant and agent. Well, at least that's how it's supposed to be. But anyways, Tucker continued. By this means also, government was reduced to its elements. Its object was defined. Its principles ascertained. Its powers limited and fixed. And we can see this very clearly in the first Constitution for these United States, that is, the Articles of Confederation. Article 2 spelled it out very, very clearly. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. Now, if we fast...
Now, so you guys can understand this, what he's talking about, right? It's not null and void. It's still active. It's never been appealed. So everything they're going through on that is still valid today. And you can put these things in the court case as well.
Forward to the ratification debates over the Constitution, James Madison explained that the Constitution would follow this same principle. The federal government would have a very clearly spelled out list of jobs, very narrow as well, and everything else would be reserved to the states. Pretty straightforward stuff. Here he is in Federalist number 45. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. Now remember how Madison described the British system before things went off the rails? Well, he used almost the exact same words to describe how things would function under the Constitution for the United States. The external stuff would be the purview of the federal government, and everything else would be reserved to the states. He wrote, the former will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which last the power of taxation will, for the most part, be connected.
Foreign commerce, not from state to state. Foreign, overseas, foreign commerce to be taxed.
He said reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which in the ordinary course of affairs concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. But the anti-federalists were not buying this description. Almost all the federalists were repeating this over and over and over. Hey, we've planned out this document. We've written out a bunch of things that are delegated to the federal government. And because we, the people of the several states, well, we're sovereign, government is just an agent and a servant, we're just spelling out what they're authorized to do. Anything that we haven't spelled out that they're authorized to do, they're not authorized to do it. But again, Anti-Federalists weren't buying it. There was no express reservation of power. It wasn't included in the document that came out of the Philadelphia Convention. So by the time the Virginia Ratifying Convention, for example, came up, Patrick Henry pointed out, well, hey, if we don't spell it out, here's a reminder of how that went down with the British. He said, how were the congressional rights defined when the people of America, united by a confederacy to defend their liberties and rights against the tyrannical attempts of Great Britain? The states, he said, were not then contented with implied reservation. So unless you spell it out, it's implied that what you're telling us is true. It even went to the point of saying, in the past, it's always been the opposite. So why is it not there? Why do we not have this included? He drove the point home by pointing out that the Articles of Confederation said it in black and white, and the Constitution said nothing. He said, no, Mr. Chairman, it was expressly declared in our Confederation that every right was retained by the states respectively, which was not given up to the government of the United States. But there is no such thing here. And because of this contentious debate over delegated and reserved powers, the Constitution almost failed ratification. I'll get to that in just a moment, but I first want to point out that while I realize I'm going through a lot of important historical information here pretty quickly, it's my hope that this episode serves as...
All right, we're going to start on the next one, y'all. And go check out their YouTube channel, right?
a bit of a highlight reel for you and encourages...
The 10th Amendment Center, okay? So, I am not no substitute of their research. So, you go there and learn from them, okay? I'm just voicing out and what I believe. He is speaking the truth and carrying on of promoting education so we can get out of this rat race. Diesel with People News. Bye, y'all.